Gentlemen, I really appreciate you guys coming today and taking the time to sit down. We're obviously at the 9th DCAC, which is awesome. I can't believe that it's at 9 years already. But really appreciate you guys sitting down. And if you don't care, we'll go around. We'll start over here and everyone introduce themselves.
Yeah, my name is Charles McCarthy, Chief Operating Officer of Suffolk Construction.
Hey, thanks for having us. My name's Corey Munoz, Project Executive with Cupertino Electric.
Very nice.
And my name is George Banos, and I'm Head of Sales at Rugged Robotics.
Very cool. Very cool. My name's Jesse Sargent, for those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to meet, but I think I've now met all of you, and I'm the President of Delivery at Overwatch. So really appreciate you guys taking the time to sit down with us. I know one thing that is super near and dear to Overwatch is the veteran community and bringing talent into this space. And I understand a couple of us are veterans here. I was former Army infantry. What about?
I was in Navy 8 years.
Very cool.
I was in the Marine Corps for 7 years.
Very cool. Very cool. And I know we've definitely spoke to your company multiple times, and you know, Kyle's a good friend of ours, and I personally have done work with Cupertino a ton in the past up in the Bay Area.
Yes, sir.
You know, how have transitioning veterans and getting veterans into this space kind of impacted your guys' labor force? I'll start with you.
You know, always looking for talented people, those that have that leadership mindset, that can-do attitude. And we find that quite frequently with our veteran community.
Yeah.
You know, we're all constantly looking for good people. You know, some, you know, stay around for a long time. Some get their feet wet and go do different things.
Definitely.
So it's kind of a mixed bag,
Yeah.
but definitely embrace, you know, our brothers and sisters that have served our country, and, you know, bring them on staff when we can.
Very cool. How about you, Charles?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is making sure that there's a rigorous training program in place. It's a new environment, different modus operandi, if you will. So they kind of have to really put a lot of effort into making sure that the transition from military life to civilian life is an easy one for them. And also they're changing the way they do things, they're operating in a different world. So there's a lot of time, you know, some of the folks have a lot of life skills and they have the technical skills, but learning some of the business skills, they may not have had to deal with that. So it's bringing them up to speed on the business acumen and really understanding what they do and the challenges that they're going through. At the end of the day, you know, it's really all about caring. So you have to kind of provide a nice place for folks to land, and be able to be patient with them. Everyone has different experiences. It's just like kids coming out of college or anyone that comes to the company, providing that transition for them, understanding what they want to do, where they want to go with their careers, and then bringing their ambition and those skill sets together. And that's where the power comes. I think, you know, people show that when you invest a little bit of time in them, you know, they're willing to commit to you. So that's what we try to do. We try and, you know, we have a commitment to the veterans. We have a veterans group that has a support group for folks that are transitioning. So that helps too. You know, so we get them plugged into that group. They do a lot of activities. You know, so there's a kind of a peer network that they can work into, folks that aren't on their projects. So that's how we accomplish it.
Yeah, I'd really love to offline connect with you about your guys' veteran group. You know, we work with a lot of different owner operators and hyperscale guys in the space. And what we found is, you know, your Navy Nuke, Air Force Power Gen Pro guys, like those guys have really found a great place within the data center community because, you know, the SOPs, the checklists. I mean, you know, if you're a Navy Nuke on a sub, you know, somebody turns the wrong dial and that can become a catastrophic situation pretty quick. Right.
Right.
And so I have personally found as we've worked with a bunch of different groups in this industry is that those guys do a phenomenal job in commissioning, operations, even construction. If they can, you know, the mindset's a little bit different between operations and construction, but they kill it there. And then, you know, we've really found that combat arms guys do a phenomenal job in project management. And it's really because, in my opinion, like they're just very even keel in stressful situations. You know, the thing with the mission critical space is, you know, we deal with, our mission critical is being uptime, right? And a lot of combat arms, I mean, theirs was mortality, right? And surviving each day. And so they do a really, really good job in transitioning into the data center space, I feel like.
You know, Jesse, I think one of the things that we do at Suffolk, I think it's really important, is when you bring people in, is transitioning them at the right level. We had a 8-year Air Force SAR that came in, and we put him in as a project manager and said, hey, we can teach you some of the skills, the leadership skills, the life skills aren't. So we didn't have to put him on that path starting as a project engineer. So I think you have to spend a lot of time to figure out where to have someone start, because I think that starting point is so important and critical to your success. You know, and I think, you know, giving those folks that opportunity to start, not necessarily at the bottom of with the kids coming right out of school.
Completely agree.
They've had a lot of responsibility and a lot of leadership experiences. And so it's sometimes you have to really manage their life experiences and where to place them in the organization. That's not always at the beginning. It's really sometimes plugging them in at that project manager or superintendent level. And then some of the skills we do as constructors, they can learn fairly quickly, but those leadership skills and that reacting under pressure are not, you know, it's, I don't know, I think they're more difficult to learn if you can learn them.
100%.
And it's interesting you bring that up, like whether you want to go an enlisted route or an officer route. I mean, it's up to the individual as well. I mean, some great mechanics that work in central plants, and they love working on the central plant. They don't have that desire to maybe, you know, wear brass on their shoulders or whatever the case may be. They want to just do it, right?
No, yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And you know, we have everything from, you know, E4s getting out of the military to E8s, E9s, O3, O4s, you know, and then you're 100% right. Like you know, me personally, I was in the Army, Army infantry, got out, went to school for mechanical engineering, and but didn't finish and everything like that. I went to work for a mechanical contractor, and then through fate ran into Kirk, you know, and Kirk's like, you know, you're a military guy, you have the leadership and this and that, we can teach you the industry. And similar, like what you were saying, he didn't start me at the very bottom. He threw me in as a superintendent. And you know, because somebody was willing to give me that opportunity and take that chance on me, I mean, I would be the first one at the job site every day and the last one to leave, and Google became my best friend, you know, trying to learn all the different terminology and everything. So I think that is very critical. Like, as we're bringing veterans into our pipeline, the first thing we do is try and help them understand where their skill sets they learned in the military transition into the civilian world, because there's actually a ton of crossover. There really is. If, you know, changes in terminology and things like that, but dealing with people is dealing with people. Managing schedules is managing schedules, and, you know, managing a budget is managing a budget. Like it doesn't matter necessarily what the context is behind those budgets or whatever it is that you're working on. It's all the same. It's just learning the terminology and transitioning over, you know.
You guys are touching on a facet of what I think is really important to this industry, and that is how are we going to fill that skills gap, and how are we going to meet the demands of the industry? There right now, there's such demand for improving and increasing the built environment, and this is something that we hear over and over: is, you know, all of the skilled workers are aging out or retiring, and we're not investing enough to get and recruiting people to come into the industry, and this is a critical component to what we all do. And I think as leaders, looking to the veterans who, they demonstrate a number of skills that aren't necessarily taught.
Right.
These are things that are experienced, and I think that the veteran community is uniquely positioned to help the construction industry and help the mission critical industry to to meet some of the challenges of the demands that we're facing?
I think it definitely could. I mean, I personally feel like our industry has two exponential threats. It's power and people. We're doing everything we can to figure out the power side of it. I think, we could probably do a little bit better job figuring out the people side of it, and what I mean by that is, look at almost any job posting for, say, a project manager, right, within the data center industry. Almost all of them will say, 3 to 5 years of data center experience, right? When the fact is our industry is, you have a lot of people with 10 to 20 years of experience. There's not a abundance of people with 3 to 5 years of experience. And that's because we've been so, dead set on over the last 10 years, hey, I need somebody with experience on my project. And don't get me wrong. I can respect that. I understand clients need that. I get it. But, all of us here build data centers. I mean, how many people sit on your project at one time, right? Like normally it's multiple people, right? We need to do a better job of pairing some of those senior experienced people that we have within the space with an individual that's coming in, and let's get them, that year, 2, 3 years of experience. So that way we are able to disperse more people across the industry because we are going to have a problem with it.
Yeah, Jesse, I think, you mentioned that partnering someone with less experience, some of the older experience. I think we've noticed that we've had a lot of peer partners, and we found that some of the most fruitful ones are where there's a lot of reverse mentoring going on.
Oh yeah, definitely.
As some of the folks that have been in the industry a little while, the technology, the leaps and bounds that we're taking just in project management software, different safety apps, and all the different things that have made our job so much more productive. As the technology comes into the construction sites, we're using a lot of the younger folks are able to teach some of the more experienced folks some of the technology. And so it's really rewarding to see that in the industry. When you see that reverse mentoring, you see some of the hard skills that are traded to the less experienced folks. And then some of kind of the technological advances, some of the older folks are taught how to, it's pretty neat to see someone that's been on a construction site for 40 years out there with the iPad and going through a BIM model. And, it's pretty amazing, and they're learning that. And so I think that the two groups, getting those two groups to meld together, it's so important. And it makes that, not only does it help with the transfer of skills, but it builds that teamwork and that collaboration. I think it really makes for real strong, powerful teams with the technology that is entering the construction sites. Today it's just, you really need that reverse mentoring. I think it's very, very important and sometimes overlooked, quite frankly.
I completely agree. I mean, I have a 12-year-old that could kick my ass on an iPad or a computer, you know what I mean? It's the thing, it changes so much every single day. It's insane. This may be a good transition point. So Rugged Robotics, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys do? And my understanding is you're working with some of these guys on some cool things, on some cool projects, got some cool gadgets out there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So Rugged Robotics is it's a company that was founded about 5 years ago. And it was founded by a construction veteran, Derek Morse, and a NASA roboticist, Logan Farrell. They had the idea of basically automating the process of layout. If you're familiar with the construction process, one of the foundational elements of manifesting a physical good from the digital design is actually looking at those designs, interpreting the design intent, and then taking measurements and marking where installations are going to be ultimately placed. And the insight that that Derek had was, this is something that we've been doing for centuries. This is a technique of taking, measurement devices and marking where things are going to go on the floor. And if you look at a traditional construction site, you'll see some of these markings, and they're very cryptic. And each trade sort of has their own methodologies and their own approach to doing it. And candidly, it's a miracle that everything fits together in the end, because often you have trades working from different sources of truth. Everybody's working from the contract documents, or is supposed to be. But you have instances where maybe a revision wasn't handed down to the correct person in the field, or you may have
supposed to be is the key word,
right? And you have some folks using tape measures and chalk lines, and some folks using more sophisticated instrumentation. But the point is that it's all fragmented, and I think one of the unique value propositions that we can offer is that when you look at the advancement that's happened in the construction industry over the last decade. Much of the advancement has happened on the software side and on improving operations from the office perspective.
Sure.
And it's only been in recent times that we've seen a lot of innovation actually go into the construction field. And one of the hardest parts about introducing technology and automating and making on-site work more effective, safer, and efficient is understanding position and understanding that precisely. I think that a crucial advancement has been taking all of the effort that goes into converting contract documents into a virtual model. All of the innovation that's happened in BIM and in VDC. We want to work downstream of that. We want to consume that finished product and take the fidelity of these highly coordinated models and replicate that precision in the field, so that it makes installation much smoother, less error prone, and that everybody is building truly from that same established level of truth. And so that's sort of our founding vision. And our first product is it's a self-contained layout robot, where we basically deliver this as a service and work with our customers to convert the BIM coordinated model into layout content that is going to accelerate installation. And where we've had a lot of success has been recently in the data center space and in mission critical work, working with the likes of Suffolk and others, where we can print large scale, very detailed modeled information and really accelerate install times and eliminate all the errors that come from misunderstandings or misinterpretation of design intent in the field.
Very cool. And for the layman like myself, does this robot like go out and do the markings for you versus like what your contractor used to do?
That's correct. Yes.
Very cool. Very cool. And my understanding is one of you or both of you may have experience using this on a program?
Yeah, we use rugged robotics on a lot of our data center builds. We started off as kind of an experiment to see what we could do. We did our traditional layout and with the trade partners. Then we had rugged robotics come in and do a layout, and we found that the accuracy was not really that close. It was off the charts. The speed, we've improved the speed a little bit. There was some learning curve. That's why it was a kind of a beta test. We kind of came in and learned how to prepare the site for the robots to operate and the surface that they need to clear paths. But as we found, as we've developed this over time, the layout accuracy has increased, off the charts, and the speed at which we're able to do this now, we're able to actually save time. And when you think of it from, it's not just the layout, the time that's spent doing the layout, but when you really, the real kind of aha moment is when you realize that the precision that you have, the cost benefit analysis of taking a little bit of time to do this layout, working with the model, but then the amount of time we save with errors and going back and doing things 2 or 3 times, things don't fit. I think one of the real important things is taking the power. We've put a lot of time, money, and effort into, VDC and BIM models, and there's a lot of effort that goes into this. Is really, I think it's really important to take that and get some value, capture some of that value. I think as an industry, we've been very poor. We've done a very poor job of capturing value of some of the products and services that we provide. And this is one way to take the sophistication, the BIM models, and bring them out into the field. And that's what, I think that's what, when we started the BIM journey 15 years ago, that's, it was a marketing tool, and then it transitioned into a coordination tool. And now we're actually, it's applied in the field.
Right.
And it's, so we've had a great experience with it. Our clients love it. And the trade partners have really bought into it. They, when you combine that with some of the things that, as we're moving into a modularized world where, you have that repetition of some of these modules, you're doing that layout. There's the opportunities to combine some of the advances we're making with modularization and the robotics are just unbelievable. I think that, we're just scratching the surface on the power that we have. And, as we started this conversation, it's about people is using, we have a limited supply of people, and really harnessing that technology, I think, is really important to solving the people piece of that equation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny you talk like starting the BIM model, like 15 years ago or whatever. I can remember over the course of my career multiple times being like, I don't understand why we're having this clash. Like, we have a BIM model, and it's like, why is this not working out? So knowing that there's, a tool on the market that is going to be able to assist with that. I mean, and especially with modular construction, right? I'm sure nothing's more frustrating than bringing a piece of equipment out to site and, you got a pipe over here and a pipe over here, and they're a half an inch off this way and an inch off that way, and trying to make it all fit.
It makes a difference. Yeah.
I can only imagine. And you guys are big into modular, correct?
Yeah. Cupertino Electric, we've been around for 70 years, full scale design build electrical contractor, specializing in 3 core markets: corporate office, renewables, data center work, mission critical work. And under the data center umbrella is our modular division.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm here to talk about today is, the efficiencies, as Charles mentioned, scalability, repeatability, efficiency. I mean, there's not a state in the union right now that doesn't have manpower issues. What are we doing to capitalize and take advantage of it? How do we scale? Those are some of the things that the modular solution can help bring value to the project.
Yeah.
So.
I know. So, probably, 6 or 7 years ago now, I was, with a project management company. We were doing a bunch of work for, CyrusOne. And I remember, they had just started containerizing all of their electrical rooms and kind of sitting them on the outside of the building, and just, it was great because it showed up and it was a product that was ready to be hooked up and go, but especially there in like the earlier years, right? Like, it was really you had to be on your stuff when it came to coordination and making sure everything would line up. And, obviously it's since exploded across the industry and people are containerizing everything now, what do you guys see that you're, bringing the most value to the client on? Is it still, kind of the electrical room solution? Or I know now, I mean, they're even, putting the rack solution on a skid and sliding that right in,
Yeah, you can go, 1 scoop of vanilla ice cream to a full, banana split. I mean,
Sure.
and whatever end users and GC partners are looking to build, we can offer that solution. Right. I think the big differentiator is the integration piece. I mean, anybody can put equipment on a skid or a platform and ship it out to a job site. But, reliability, does it work once it gets there? Has it been tested? Has it been, commissioned before it's gotten there? I mean, have the bugs been worked out? Does EPMS, BMS interface work? Right. Those are the things that we're looking is once we send a project from our factory to your job site, it's going to work.
Right.
We're not running the ball down, the football field and running out on the 20-yard line. We're scoring a touchdown.
I like that. That is very cool. And with Rugged Robotics, are you guys working with a lot of, containerized solution manufacturers that, they're like, hey, this is probably the most critical piece of us.
Most of that has been, and candidly, we have entered the data center market and are now on our 5th data center project. And, there's constantly new use cases for leveraging the power of this technology. All of this is enabled by, frankly, the work that's done upstream, and I would say led by builders that want to take the design intent and really understand how they're going to get their trade partners to execute on that as efficiently as possible. And so it's the leaders like Suffolk and others that are basically owning that process of converting contract document into constructible model and getting into the precision and the detail. How are we going to build this when when we do mobilize to the job site, and getting those details in place? To Charles's earlier point, this has largely been an effort. It started out as sort of a marketing differentiator, then it became a coordination exercise. But when you get to the field, you're still basically working in this virtual realm and trying to convert those virtual details into physical goods. And I think that our solution has evolved to the point where we can now take these BIM models, and these become effectively the instruction manual for modularization, for different methods of attacking these problems and incorporating, speed and precision into the process. So this is something that we're all kind of addressing from different vantage points, but it's really rewarding to see this unfold.
No, listen, I think it's extremely cool. I mean, there was a group here that had some robot dogs out here. I mean, one shook my hand at breakfast, you know what I mean? So
we had Spot here with us now.
Yeah, he's there.
Oh yeah, that is so you want to know something? I obviously, like I'm sure the rest of you, I have to travel a lot for work, and I coach my boys' football team. And I was like, I want one of those dogs with an iPad on the top of it that I can FaceTime into football practice, and that dog run up and down the field as I'm yelling at people. No, those are so cool, man. Boston Dynamics, I've watched some of the videos. Like, it is eerie the way some of those robots move now and do flips and all this stuff. But Charles, I wanted to ask you, being a group that obviously you're engaged with the owner and you're introducing some of these new technologies to them, obviously from the owner's side, like, guys, we build amazing, cool boxes with great power and cooling, but at the end of the day, it's all a finance game, right? And so the question always is, well, what's this technology cost me and things like that? And I don't want to know the cost. That's not what I'm asking. But like from your side, I'd have to imagine that, sure, there's a proof of concept that has to take place, but then I'm sure that your owners are seeing the value in those things as well.
Yeah, I think there's a proof of concept, but we're building, and the technology has advanced, and just look at modularization. That we're building on such a scale now where it's become economically viable. We've kind of passed that point where it was kind of a showpiece, or pick up a little bit of time, or solve a little labor issue. Now it's almost become a necessity, and the scale and the complexity of the modularization in particular has reached a point where it has become economically viable now. Where in the past it was an added cost, or it may have been maybe a push, but now we're seeing it's really becoming, part of the owners are counting on the cost savings that goes in there. We've just hit that point where you're doing it on such a scale where it's become, the economies of scale have kicked in, and it's become really economically viable. And it's not an alternate; it's almost a necessity to really drive some things. And Corey brings up something with the integration. I think is really important. Is all the technology that we're bringing, whether it's rugged robotics or Spot here or anything else, any of the modularization strategies that we're doing, it really still revolves around the people. That integration that Corey talked about is really so important. You can never really replace that. So it's making, I think there's a difference between replacing the labor force and making that labor force more efficient. And we're just using a technology, because I think that replacing the labor force is scary. It's the nightmare, right?
Sure.
But, just making that existing labor force more productive, I think that's the name of the game. And that's what we've seen with rugged robotics and the modularization strategies that Cupertino's brought. It's just been time savings, the monetary savings. There's so many different things that you increase. You're getting some people out of, when you're doing layout, you're getting some people out where reducing those exposures. So your safety is increased because you're having less exposure hours to people out in the site. So, there's a lot of things. You have to look at the whole, there's certainly a monetary component that's very important. So it drives a lot of the industry. But when you look at it from the safety perspective is really important too. And making, increasing the productivity and efficiency of the workers that we have. I think that's where the technology, and that's where the successful companies like Cupertino, Rugged are able to really take existing labor forces and make them more productive, because that's the name of the game. It's not about replacing labor. It's really making them more productive.
That is such an important point.
Yeah,
and I think
100%.
that's a mindset.
Yeah.
There are technophobic people, right, who believe that that robots are going to replace us, and that AI is taking all of our jobs, and it's in my opinion the wrong mindset. It's a mindset of I think it was Steve Jobs that made that analogy for computers being the bicycle for the mind.
Yeah,
and I think that's such a powerful way to frame this, where we are equipping humans to do far more than they were ever capable of, and leveraging technology. That's the whole point. That's what technology is for. It's for making humans, enabling humans to accomplish so much more efficiently, and hitting some of those economic benefits, and delivering projects faster, safer, and more of them.
yeah. No, I mean, across the board, I have seen, things like Spot here, or I haven't got to work with Rugged Robotics yet. We'll change that. And but just the way that you can throw on a headset now and literally play with the BIM model and see what will fit where. I mean, it makes a huge difference. And I'd have to imagine, like you were saying, we've reached a point in the industry where I feel like more and more people now understand, hey, sure, this may be an upfront cost, but the cost it saves me in, rework and, safety incidences or whatever, right? You name it. It ends up being a cost savings. Yeah.
The mission critical sector has always been kind of on the cutting edge. And I think Kurt talked about it today in his opening meeting here at the conference, where, where this industry is going to kind of be the focal point of the economies here in the very near future. And so I think that we have an obligation as leaders of the economies to really keep pushing that envelope. And I think that, embracing that technology is a really important component of that. I mean, you really have to, we have to, change the way we look at the world. The world is changing. Kurt went through his discussion of the various industrial revolutions that we've been in, and we're in a new time, and we have to change the way we do things. And I think that, the construction industry has been a little static, and I think it's time to change that. I think you need real partners like Rugged and Cupertino that come in and really use that technology to push the industry forward. And that's where I think, as the data center industry grows, I think that's where the separation between the A players and the B players is going to be, is how they're able to have they made those investments in technology, and are they able to harness that power of technology? And I think that's what's going to be the differentiator, the market different. There's always a differentiator, right? And so I think how you're able to manage and push that technology forward is really going to, determine who's successful in the next decade.
I think you bring up a very interesting point, because, even though we're sitting here talking about technology on the actual construction site and everything like that, it's really across the board. Like, even if you look at nuclear power, and I know Kirk talks about this a lot, unfortunately, and it was a little bit before my time, but, you had incidences like Chernobyl, and then, a decade or so ago, Fukushima, and like, there's such a stigma around nuclear energy and emerging technologies in general, right? I mean, there are people out there that are very heavily against, wearable technology and augmented realities and things like that. But, like I was mentioning with my 11-year-old earlier, like we are going to be forced to go down that road regardless. So like, to your point, why don't we be good stewards of it? And why don't we set it up in such a way that, it is dependable, it is reliable, it is ethical, it is, it's not taking away jobs. Like these things can be done in a way where they can be a symbiotic unit and move forward together and not be
I think that's the only way
it is. And like I know it was a comedian and I know he was being funny, but like, last night he's like, is this Skynet? Like, is that what's happening here? And somebody messing with him was like, we got 5 years left. It's like, and it's because that's what we all grew up with,
right.
You know what I mean? Was robots were going to come from the future and try and kill us. And, but at the end of the day, I mean, like I said, one stood on its hind legs and drew a heart at me earlier today, so it's like,
it's interesting when you look at Jesse, look at, you said you're a football coach, right? Just look at how the football equipment has changed. I'm more of a hockey lacrosse guy, but just look at what it's allowed athletes to do with the protective equipment. They're reducing the weights, increasing, the protection power that equipment has. I mean, it's changed the game. I mean, people can operate at the speeds and the weights and it's completely changed the game. And this technology is no different than that. I think the parallel is pretty close. I think you really have to, is that hurting the game having better equipment? I mean, there's nothing like watching Alexander. I'm a hockey guy, so watching Alexander Ovechkin snap a wrist shot from the corner there, it's amazing. And he wouldn't have been able to do that with the technology and the equipment that was around in 1962. And so I think, you have to really embrace that change that's coming, and you can either be a catalyst for that change or you can get in the way. And, and I think our three companies here have chosen to be catalysts of that change, and we embrace that.
And it's funny. I mean, nothing's getting slower. I mean, to stay with the sports analogy, we're sliding a lot, right? I mean, it'd be nice to have that walk-in homer, but we're sliding.
Right.
And unless we're doing something different, to embrace and at least score the run, you got to think outside the box.
Yeah. Well, and sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, construction often gets a bad rap for being slow to adopt technology. And it's interesting to kind of take the opposite position. I think a lot of the technology, specifically in the field, when we're talking about technological advancements that impact on-site construction work, a lot of it has been held back by just the state of the tech. And I think it's only been, I mentioned this earlier, advancements in sensing and in mobile computation and even power storage. A lot of the vision technologies, all of these things have evolved to the point where it is now proven, and it is now something that can be deployed at scale.
Right.
And I think that's you're starting to see this impact just about every construction site, particularly in the U.S. today. But what has not been true is in the past, this has just not been feasible, or it's been too expensive. And it's an exciting time right now to watch this unfold. And I think that's what's really compelling.
I agree. So, from Cupertino's perspective, how has having these new technologies come into the workspace? I mean, how has your labor force been receptive to it? And obviously we know all the standard, improvements that you can get from using technology, but like, how has your organization benefited from it the most, would you say?
Well, we definitely embrace it. I mean, we believe we like to be on the cutting edge up front of some of these new innovations and technologies. 12, 14 years ago, when we first deployed modular in the market, there was, I think it was met with a little resistance, but now, I mean, it's fully embraced. I don't think there's a project that we work on today that does not have some form of modular component to it. So, it's gone full circle, and it's good.
It is. I agree. So, what, like, especially from your perspective and yours too, Charles, like, are we still running into roadblocks to get some of these technologies into?
Absolutely.
And what do you think we can do to kind of get rid of the rest of those roadblocks?
I think it's a natural evolution. Charles mentioned, this is a great point, that mission critical construction has been sort of at the forefront of adopting new and different approaches just because of the nature of the project. It's very complex. There's a lot of high tech installations going in there, and this commands a different approach to how traditional, building a stick frame house might work. I think that a lot of the practices that are in place on what I would call these tech forward or tier one projects are ultimately going to work their way into how we just approach general construction in a standard operating procedure. To your question, what can we specifically do to eliminate bottlenecks and roadblocks? I think that there's a number of forces that just will naturally drive the industry forward. And one of them happens to be this labor shortage that we mentioned earlier. I think that, in order for us to meet the demands that are being placed on us as an industry, we're going to have to adopt technology to solve these problems. We have to.
Yeah.
Another one is, and we talked about this earlier, is safety. It's becoming less and less, thank goodness, less and less tolerable to have any sort of, harm come to employees. I mean, when you zoom all the way out and look at the work that we do, it's almost unimaginable to think that, we're putting people's lives at risk to complete a job. And I think that those two are sort of the driving forces that will enable widespread adoption of technology at scale. The other one is that the cost of these things is just constantly coming down. Yeah. And those forces are ultimately going to eliminate any resistance to adopting technology.
Is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that there are roadblocks certainly, but I think as contractors, trade partners, and folks in the industry, I think we have an obligation. I don't think we always do a good enough job communicating the advantages that we get. You've seen, I think we have to really understand, and what that involves, I think, is understanding what the technology brings to your project and really understanding how to harness it, and then communicating that to the owners and the stakeholders of the project. Because I think that historically, construction, we've done things and we haven't really done a great job of communicating some of the changes and revolutions that we've done. I mean, at Suffolk, we've done everything from creating the first clean data lake in the construction industry. We have owner dashboards. We monitor everything that goes on the sites, and it's not, again, to replace project managers. It's really to use them as kind of tripwires to say, hey, when we've seen this problem in the past, or we've seen this condition in the past, it usually leads to a claim or this or that. So we're able to avoid those and use our lessons. But I think really communicating the technological advances that we have to the owners is something we haven't done a good job at. And I think that's where a lot of the change in the industry can come from, because at the end of the day, there has to be that benefit. There has to be that tangible benefit. Otherwise, people aren't going to embrace it. And I think as an industry, we have to do a better job. And, we've done, the modularization that, worked on a project with Corey, I don't know, 12 years ago. It was bolting UPSs and transformers onto skids and sliding them in.
Postage stamps.
It postage stamps. It was, and just to see the modularization change over time. But the reason that that's kind of stuck together is because, organizations like Cupertino and Suffolk have been committed to some of these technological advances and have communicated those successes. And I think at the end of the day, what really hits the road is we as a contractor, and I'll speak for Suffolk, is we as a contractor committed to technology. And you kind of put your money where your mouth is, and we don't always have to be reimbursed for this. We see the value in bringing someone like Rugged Robotics to our data center builds because it's more efficient. It saves money, it saves time, it reduces errors. There's absolutely no question that it resolves those issues for us. And I think that we have to, commit to the technology ourselves. And I think that, sometimes we don't do that as companies. And again, it goes back to what we were saying before. I think the companies that do that are really going to be successful, and really at the end of the day, they're gonna make the cut. And others that really don't embrace it and don't put their money where their mouth is are gonna be playing catch up. And when you embrace technology and you're on the forefront, just as we think about how fast technology moves, if you don't embrace it today, you can't catch up. You have to. It's changing day by day, minute by minute. Not to be too dramatic, but you got to really stay on top of it. So.
And to your point, deploying tech just to deploy tech isn't really the solution, right? Sometimes it could actually be counterproductive if you don't have a plan to deploy the tech, right? Like I had a customer the other day ask me, "Hey, what do you think about putting these pieces of equipment on skid?" And I'm like, I did the analysis. I'm like, it doesn't make sense for you. We're not getting any scale or economy out of doing it. Just putting gear on a plate is not doing it for you, right? So, yeah.
Well, I think it's important to mention too, for like people that, I think we're all very fortunate that we work in a very high tech field and we're able to understand the way a lot of these things work better than most. And for as much as people want to say we're approaching Terminator or Skynet or anything like that, like, another point I would make towards replacing the labor force is like, these technologies are only as good as the data that's inputted into them, right? And so like, you put shit in, you're going to get shit out. And that used to be my largest issue with a lot of, the project management softwares and BIM and things like that, is like, if people didn't take the time to actually put the data into the tool, the tool wasn't as useful. And what's great is people are being forced to make those adoptions, and I think people are realizing it's not going to take away your job. Like, your job's still there, your job's still critical, but now instead of the job taking you, a couple days to do, you can do it in a day, right? Like, and that's the way people need to look at it, and hopefully, I think the way most people are starting to look at it. And to your point about people are, if you want to be considered a tier 1 asset, or sorry, that was very military of me, but you guys know what I mean. You are going to have to use those, and I think it's going to force everyone else to begin to adopt those things as well. And if we don't, I promise the younger generation is going to make us. So.
Yeah, I think as with the build plans that a lot of the owners have, I mean, we've never seen anything like this in this industry, or I don't think anywhere. But I mean, they're very ambitious. And I think we have, and there's not only do we have to increase that labor supply, but what if that labor supply remains fixed? We have to still be able to meet these goals and have to do that. And the only way to do that is with technology. Even if we do add additional people to the workforce, at the pace that we're building and the volume that we're building, you can't close your eyes on technology. It's just, you're going to be left behind. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think you said earlier too, where Kirk was maybe mentioning, like, that this industry is going to be mainstream and a driver of the economy. And the crazy thing is, at least in my opinion, like, we're probably already that. And it's sitting in the background and nobody realizes it yet. But every single thing you do today is somehow connected to data and tied back to a data center somewhere.
Can you imagine the hangover we would have had from COVID had we not had all the reliance on the digital economy and Zoom and Teams and all those wonderful applications that we so readily use now? Imagine what the hangover would have been from in the post-COVID world. We've still been reeling from it. And, Kurt mentioned this. I loved it when it was exciting when he talks about it. It was a blip. We recovered from that very, very quickly. And it kind of launched us into the next industrial revolution. But I mean, just think of, had we not had this digital infrastructure that we have in the world today, how long it would have taken us to get over that. Can you imagine in 1970, if we were back in 1972, a pandemic hit like that, trying to get groceries or anything to your house with the panic that happened during COVID? It would have been a very different outcome had data centers not been there.
It wouldn't have just been a toilet paper shortage.
Right.
There would have been none. You know what I mean? We would have been in big trouble. But it's 100% accurate. I mean, it's really funny you bring that up. I was just reading something the other day where, there's a lot of people that believe that COVID advanced the adoption of technology by like 20 years in a year span, simply because like individuals that weren't reliant on those things before all of a sudden were.
Dependency.
And they had that dependency to be able to keep their job, log into a Zoom meeting, use Microsoft Office tools finally, instead of it just being something that people provided to you at work. You know what I mean? And it became it became mainstream kind of then, honestly, if you think about it. And it's very cool to be part of, and the fact that, we're here at a conference with a bunch of our peers, and we didn't get to do that in the COVID year, obviously, but it's crazy just how much things have changed in a couple year span.
I heard somebody, I forget the speaker's name, but I love what he said. He's like, using a baseball analogy, we're in the second inning, and we've been in the second inning for the last 20 years. It's just incredible to see what this AI revolution with all this tech, what's going to happen, next 10, 20 years. I mean, it's remarkable.
I can't even imagine, like, I think about my grandma who was born in 1933, and it's like the things that woman has seen, I mean? And like the change in technology, and like, I'm sitting here, I was born in 88, and like, I'm like, man, what's it going to be like in 2088? You know what I mean? And just how different things are going to be. It's crazy. But, gentlemen, I super appreciate you guys coming and sitting down with me and having a great conversation about technology and people. And, it's organizations like yours that are critical to what we're trying to do here as a vertical. And, it's going to keep people from having assigned times on Netflix and their tools and toys and everything they like to play with. But I want to give you guys an opportunity. If you want to let anybody know how they can reach you, for either a job or an opportunity or, potential clients, please feel free, and we'll link your guys' LinkedIn and everything with these. And, guys, I just really appreciate your time, and thanks for coming to DCAC. And, your guys' organization specifically helped make this thing possible, and we really appreciate it.
It was our pleasure and honor. Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you
having
so
us,
much.
Jesse.
We really appreciate it.
Definitely. All right, we're going to get back to the conference and have a good time.
All right.
Thanks.
Yep, thank you guys.